Hello, everyone. I am back here with my uh, third video. Having the discussion on male essay. Let's get into it. Today I'm coming from uh, law and crime. Let's get into it. Schedule bookings online. Sorry about the ad. Send text updates to customers and
Police in Illinois say an accused sexual predator is out of the classroom and behind bars instead. A long-term substitute teacher is accused of raping one of...
And I'm gonna be pointing out women perpetrators who either essay their students or essay men.
For 11-year-old students. We're taking a closer look at these horrifying allegations against Allie Bardfield with John Clune, an attorney and advocate for sexual abuse survivors. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. 32-year-old substitute teacher Allie Bardfield, who worked for Decatur Public School in Illinois as a long-term substitute teacher, has been arrested and charged with predatory criminal sexual assault. Does this sound familiar? We are seeing so many of these stories. Well, in a sworn statement to the court, a detective laid out what are very disturbing details that he says police were able to uncover during the course of this investigation, all about Bardfield's appalling behavior with her sixth grade student. Think about that. I want to talk about all of this as we go in through a lot of these details with John Clune, an attorney helping fight for victims in sexual abuse cases. John, thanks so much for coming on. I just want your initial reaction before we even jump into the court documents.
Yeah, well, like you said, it's incredibly disturbing. I think that when the age of the kid and the nature of the sexual act is probably a little on the more unusual side, but it's a great reminder for all of us and all of us that are parents that it's not just male offenders that we have.
You gotta worry about the females
female
too.
offenders out there. It's a much smaller percentage, but this is a perfect example of where you can have a worst case scenario from somebody that you might have thought you could trust.
And by the way, thank you for the work that you do as we cover these stories. It's people like you who are able to get the victims of this some justice. So, according to the detective's sworn statement, this woman, there was a woman who allowed her 11-year-old son to spend the night at the home of his teacher, Allie Bardfield. So the sixth grader was there for 25 hours from March 29th to March 30th. This is according to police. And when the boy got home, he was apparently acting strangely. This is according to his mom. So the next day, she checked his phone, and what does she reportedly find? Cash App payments from Bardfield, totaling $700 over the last several months. She also reportedly checked her son's social media accounts and found photos and messages that the two had sent to each other. So when the boy's mom apparently asked him what was going on, he did admit that he had unprotected sexual intercourse with Bardfield. John, I mean, I don't know what aspect of this is more stunning than the next.
Yeah, one of the things I think hits everybody initially is why is the kiddo staying at this teacher's house for 25 hours? Right. And it's easy to question that with the hindsight of knowing what actually transpired about the sexual abuse and the cash out payments, but knowing also that this woman has kids of her own. This could have been something that looked like just a normal sleepover at the time that the kid went over to stay at her house for the night. So although it kind of stands out that he was at the house for 25 hours, it might have been nothing more than a normal sleepover until you find out the events thereafter. But there's also some good things that I think are notable here in what you just read. I mean, first of all, the boy's acting strangely, and good for the mom for following up with that. A lot of times as parents, our kids act strangely all the time. And most of the time we just kind of slough it off. They're in a mood or whatever. We're just going to let it go. So good for the mom for following up with that. Good for the mom for checking his phone, at the age of 11. I think that, phones can be a good safety measure, but they also have to have limitations and they have to be checked. And so, that was a smart decision on the mom's part, and good for the kid for having the courage to admit what had happened. It must have been incredibly embarrassing, and who knows what instruction he was given from Miss Barfield about keeping this secret.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, particularly about the idea of the mom. We don't want to cast any blame on her. You know, this is not necessarily abnormal for this to happen, but clearly what escalated was abnormal. The Cash App payments, have you seen that before? And why does that usually happen?
I don't think I've seen the Cash App payments. I've seen, we've for years, even before we had apps like this, we've seen offenders make promises or make gifts to children. It's a part of the grooming process. It develops the relationship, and the interesting thing is that it actually probably qualifies as sex trafficking as well. That would be a federal crime, although Illinois may have their own version of that, but. Paying, a financial transaction for child sexual abuse would qualify as trafficking. So, giving some sort of promise is a common thing. I don't know that I've seen, something like Cash App or Venmo used as part of the process, but
it's stories like this that just remind me how important it is to be careful about who you let into your life. Do you know the people in your life? It's a scary thing to think about, but that is why I want to talk to you about our incredible sponsor who may be able to help you out, TruthFinder. TruthFinder is a service that can provide actual safety for you guys. And I say that because TruthFinder is one of the largest public records search services in the United States. Their goal is to help people like you learn about the people in their lives. And here's how it works. You go on their website, truthfinder.com, and you type in a name. For instance, put in my name, Jesse Weber. You type in my name, and within minutes and a paid subscription purchase, you can access unlimited reports that can include information like phone numbers, location history, criminal and traffic records, including possible arrests and criminal convictions. I don't have those, but you get the idea. TruthFinder has been partnering with Law and Crime for a while now. We actually use it.
If you're an eyeglass wearer like me, then you need to go to iBuyDirect. I went a little crazy recently and got not one, not two, not three, but 4 new pairs of prescription lenses. I love shopping with iBuyDirect because they have hundreds of frames for 2-day shipping. I literally got these glasses in 2 days, which is crazy. These ones are my favorite. They're in Notting Hill. iBuyDirect has virtual try-on, so you can try on all the different types of glasses to see which ones you like and which ones you think fit your face the best. I also got this pair in Claudia. Love this style, love this frame. Third pair is in Fortune. Love this frame for when I want something very minimal and very elegant. The last pair I got is in Blizzard. I love the shape. I love these for when I just want something basic. iBuyDirect also offers sunglasses, tints, as well as blue light filtering lenses.
TruthFinder has been partnering with Law and Crime for a while now. We actually use it to research some of the cases that we've been covering on Sidebar, but generally speaking, it can help provide peace of mind when you do these unlimited public record searches. Also, you know what's really useful? Is that from within the report, you can search an address, like a home address, to see registered sex offenders that may live in that area too, and that's the point. Unless you use TruthFinder, you may never know the reality about the people around you. Also, TruthFinder, incredible resource to use when reconnecting with people, long lost friends, family members you haven't spoken to in a while. You can use TruthFinder to help track down these people's information. It is a great, great tool. Now, here is the kicker. Right now, you can get 50% off of your first month of confidential background reports. Just go to truthfinder.com/LC sidebar. Hope you check it out. So the boy apparently did tell police that he was in fact sexually assaulted by his teacher, Miss Barfield, and even described that on the night of March 29th, he slept over her home, was in her bedroom. They had sexual intercourse. Barfield even allegedly told him that she would send him nude photos on the Snapchat app. I mean, you mentioned it before, John, about how difficult this must be for this boy to admit this. But just the idea of this woman.
This is proof that the female perpetrators are just as wicked as the male ones.
Treating this, I'm putting this in quotation, relationship as if it was like two consenting adults, the exchanging of these messages, the exchanging of nude photographs, the sexual intercourse. What drives somebody in your experience to do this with a young child?
Yeah, well, it's super predatory. It's super deviant. There's no kind of relationship that involves this kind of behavior with an 11-year-old. So, this is somebody who is a predatory sex offender, and we see it, with victims at ages even much younger, even toddlers, infants. So I can't get into the mind of what drives somebody to do it, but it's somebody who has a super unhealthy psyche for sure.
Yeah, and you just think about the impact that this has on such a young boy. But it doesn't end there. Because you might be saying, oh, that seems like they have a lot of evidence against Barfield. I didn't get to this part. Because police had the boy text Barfield and speak to her on the phone and FaceTime, all while officers were listening and watching all of this, all in the presence of his mom, too. She consented to this. And they texted and talked about birth control and pregnancy, telling him she can't get pregnant. Barfield allegedly told the boy to delete a message, and she at one point said that she missed him a whole lot. John, have you ever seen that? And look, law enforcement, they did get permission from the court to do this, but have you ever seen this kind of sting operation like this?
This is a pretty, we call them pretextual phone calls. Now they're texts and video chats as well, but this is something that's been used by law enforcement for many, many years. It can be the case breaker, which it kind of is here as well. You get a call or a text message from somebody that you recently had, some sort of untoward encounter from, and you think it's a private conversation, and it's really being directed by law enforcement. In most states, you don't even have to get court approval to do this. It's just a voluntary phone call. You do have to be careful with, when you're dealing with an 11-year-old, you have to make sure that you have some comfort level that this is not going to be a re-traumatizing experience for the kiddo to make these calls. But if the kiddo can do it, which he obviously did here, it can be incredibly compelling evidence, as you just described.
Oh, yeah. And not surprisingly, she was arrested the next day at her home. And after reading her Miranda rights to her, law enforcement, apparently Barfield agreed to speak to officers and allegedly admitted what she did, not only to the sexual component, the sex act, but exchanging the nude photos component. And she tried to suggest that the boy came onto her, John.
Bullshit.
Yeah, I mean,
that's gross.
This is the beauty of the both the digital evidence on the phone and the pretextual phone call that they did, is you can just show this individual the information they already have, and they're going to be they're going to be hard pressed to deny what's going on when they have her own voice in this phone call. So I'm not surprised that there were some admissions made. It's obviously disturbing that she then kind of suggested it was the boy who was the aggressor. But I've seen that before with other, particularly with female victims or female offenders, where even much younger boys, they suggest that they are the initiator of sexual contact, which obviously makes no sense. But either that's where she sees it in kind of a more warped view of the events, or as she just feels like she needs to say something to not be responsible for it.
Unbelievable. Now, look, these are allegations at this point, but I should tell you, the Macon County State Attorney, Scott Reuter, dropped the initial, there was a grooming charge. It was quoted as saying, quote, the grooming charge is a much less serious criminal offense. I felt that we had a very strong case with respect to the more serious charge, so I didn't want to get distracted basically on that when we've got the most serious charge.
Okay, I get it.
Filed, and the what I mentioned before, the Predatory Sex Act carries, I believe, 6 to 60 years in prison. A, what do you make of that idea to now just go forward with, I think, the most serious charge? And B, how strong of a case is this right now?
Yeah, so I mean, different prosecutors do things differently. When I was a prosecutor, there were a lot of times that I would streamline the case and go forward with just the more serious charge. Sometimes, depending on the facts of the case, I might go with everything that we could possibly prove. So I'm sure that's just a strategic decision on the part of the prosecutor's office. And how strong of a case, presuming that there isn't any Fourth Amendment issues where these this phone call or these confessions can be thrown out, it's an incredibly strong case. It would be, I know she's pled not guilty, but
which I don't get, because if she admitted it, I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that's a temporary plea, is my suspicion. Her lawyer doesn't want her to plead guilty yet because he or she wants to see if they can get some sort of plea bargain, some sort of sentence concession, something other than just pleading guilty to the charges straight up. So I would expect that to be something that changes as her attorney tries to get something for her in negotiating.
If plea were to be worked out, what would she be looking at? Any prison time at all? And if she took it to trial and was found guilty, what do you think she'd be looking at?
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, if you take it to trial and lose, you shouldn't get punished for exercising your rights. But some judges feel like, that's somebody who has never taken responsibility for what they did, and so they might be facing a longer sentence. I'd be surprised if there was a plea bargain that didn't involve some sort of prison time. I mean, this is an incredibly serious charge. This kid is going to be dealing with this issue in some fashion for the rest of his life, and I think judges are pretty attuned to those things. So I'd be surprised if she could get something that doesn't involve a prison sentence, but maybe the job of her attorney is to negotiate something that limits the maximum sentence that she could get.
Now, the Decatur Public Schools, they fired Bardfield when she was arrested. Not a shocker there. She's been behind bars since her arrest after a judge denied her pretrial release. She chose to waive her preliminary hearing. That's usually where the prosecution is you have to present your evidence of what you have. And she's going to be back at court at the beginning of June. So we'll see if she changes her plea or what might happen. The victim's family announced in early April that they've retained attorneys to pursue legal action against not only Bardfield, but also Decatur Public Schools. The legal team said in a statement, quote, "On April 3rd, 2024, Allie Bardfield was arrested on charges of grooming and predatory criminal sexual assault of our client. The accused abused her position as a sixth-grade teacher to exploit our client's trust and engage in reprehensible acts. Ms. Bardfield's actions have had a profound and lasting impact on our client, which will likely lead to significant physical, emotional, and psychological challenges. The perpetrator's predatory actions have left our client with permanent injuries that have greatly disrupted his and his family's daily life. As a result, we will be pursuing justice not only against Ms. Barfield, but also the school district as a whole, which failed to properly train and supervise in order to ensure the safety and well-being of its students. We are determined to hold both the perpetrator and the school fully accountable under the law." Strong lawsuit, John?
Maybe. I think, you have to keep in mind when schools are responsible when they've done something wrong, not when one of their employees necessarily has done something wrong. So that's why the lawsuit is couched as failure to train or supervise. So you have to have some sort of information that, the school was on notice that they should have done more training or supervising for this particular individual. I mean, it's a case that could get strong as the case moves forward, or maybe there's more facts that the family has that aren't, disclosed in the limited articles that are out there. But it's certainly understandable to be very frustrated with the school, and there certainly could be liability there, but we have to wait and see.
And she was married, Bardfield, married with children. Husband, Casey, recently filed for their marriage to be dissolved and also filed for an emergency order of protection from his former wife on behalf of the 4 minor children. As far as we can tell from court records, Barfield doesn't have any criminal history aside from some minor traffic infractions and ordinance violations. Let's just end it with this, John. Not surprising, we see somebody in these cases living another life, having an affair. I mean, I've covered so many of these cases of educators who are married or have children or who are,
But why the kids, though, man?
And does that ever surprise you? Does that ever shock you?
Why the kids?
I mean, it doesn't surprise me, and I guess the immediate concern is having these, her own kiddos interviewed, because it's not uncommon to have crossover behavior between, an offender finding victims that aren't their own children and are their own children. So, hopefully they're not more victims here, but that'd be my first reaction to hearing about the kids and the need for the emergency protection order from the husband.
John Clune, Thanks so much for coming
And
on.
I got
Appreciate
another
your point of
clip
view.
for you guys.
Thank you, Jesse.
Out of New Jersey.
That's all we have for you here on Sidebar, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, as always.
And here's another one.
It's really frightening. It just goes to show you that they are predators.
And here goes another female predator. Let's get into it.
These individuals who are being charged with these crimes.
A former New Jersey teacher is slammed with another round of sex crimes charges after a second former student comes forward with shocking allegations.
Wait a minute, this is the second one?
Well, now you're dealing with almost like a different profile of this defendant, of this person, as a predator, as somebody who was taking
and this here was 7
perhaps
months ago
multiple,
out of state of
young
New Jersey.
children.
Experts say these new charges only make things worse for the now disgraced former teacher.
It's really problematic for this woman who's being charged, because the more people who come forward and give credible accounts of their experiences with her, the more likely it is that a jury is going to believe that she did this.
We're hearing from criminal defense attorney and former sex crimes prosecutor Serena Townsend about everything we know so far.
But on these teacher cases, it's almost like there was a reason why they became a teacher, it seems. Like they wanted to have this access to multiple potential victims, and that's what we're seeing. It's going to look very bad for her in court.
Law and Crime first reported on the story of Julie Rizzatello early this month. On July 3rd, the 36-year-old was arrested and charged. It was around this same time that Rizzatello put in her notice, resigning from her position as an English teacher at Wall High School in East New Jersey. According to an affidavit, Rizzatello had a sexual relationship with one of her former students between April and June 14th of this year. She was charged with 2 counts of sexual assault.
As she should have been charged.
Sexual contact. What is the difference there between the assault and the contact charges?
So it all depends. Every state has kind of different laws with respect to sexual assault, and it depends on the actual act that occurred. So sometimes you have a greater
Lord.
degree of felony if one part of someone's body touches another part of someone's body. And so it oftentimes relates to the types of sexual acts that occur. And then again, you also have the type of sexual crime that is charged when you are in a certain position of power, like she is. And so it'll depend on kind of the evidence that they've uncovered, what exactly she did or what this person is claiming she did. And that will determine which charges are going to be put forth.
According to court documents, Rizzatello allegedly engaged in various sexual acts with a victim on multiple occasions and in at least 3 jurisdictions. The survivor was 18 years old during the alleged assaults, but it's still considered a crime because Rizzatello had a supervisory or disciplinary power over him. The documents specifically point to May 14th, when Rizzatello and the former student allegedly had a sexual encounter in his car. She also allegedly sent the survivor naked pictures of herself and later asked him to delete the pics just 1 day before she was arrested and booked into jail. But just 2 weeks after she was first charged, Rizzatello was charged again.
It's not that common, but I am seeing it more and more often these days, particularly in these cases with these female teachers. It's really frightening. It just goes to show you that they are predators, these individuals who are being charged with these crimes. Usually on a sex crimes case, you see one defendant, one potential victim or survivor. But on these teacher cases, it's almost like there was a reason why they became a teacher, it seems. Like they wanted to have this access to multiple potential victims. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing these students come forward, and it's hardly ever just one when it's a student.
The fact that there are 2 students or former student accusers in this instance, does that bolster the case for the prosecution to kind of show that this is some sort of pattern?
It definitely does. It's really problematic for this woman who's being charged, because the more people who come forward and give credible accounts of their experiences with her, the more likely it is that a jury is going to believe that she did this. there are laws and rules that say that you can't introduce other prior bad acts of a defendant, for example. But if they're actually charged with those acts in an indictment, you can introduce all of the evidence that you want on all of those acts. So it's going to look very bad for her in court.
In the second case, Rizzatello faces similar charges to the first. I asked Townsend to explain this. She was charged with 1 count of second-degree sexual assault and then 1 count of third-degree tampering. Can you break down those charges for me?
Sure. Well, the sexual assault charge comes from her position as a teacher. It's my understanding that not only did she have sexual contact with students who may have been underage, at least at some point in the relationship, but there's actually a separate crime in and of itself, even if the student was of age, that she's being charged with simply by the fact that she was in a position of power. She had the power to supervise and discipline these individuals as their teacher, and because of that, because of her position and their position, it is in fact a crime, even if they attained legal status of their age. So she's being charged with sexual assault because of that. And then with respect to tampering, which is so unfortunate because, as a former sex crimes prosecutor, I used to charge crimes like this all of the time, but it was very rare to also have a tampering charge on top of the actual sex crime, particularly between adults. But you see, between these teachers and their students, or teachers and children, that there's oftentimes this added aspect of the witness tampering. And here it's because she's asked that student to delete certain pictures or text messages that they had, which is evidence of the crime. So she's actually asking them to destroy evidence, and that is tampering with evidence and witness tampering.
Officials say the second accuser came forward
but wouldn't that be obstruction too?
When she was first charged for the sexual harassment that allegedly happened this spring. But these second set of allegations have a different timeline. For this new round of charges, the allegations date back to 2017, so kind of a while ago. Does that make things more difficult in terms of the prosecution against her?
So yeah, anytime a case comes forward a little later and the outcry, for example, is late or delayed, there are certain individuals on a jury who might look at that and say, well, why didn't they say something sooner? But we know, that, again, as a former prosecutor, and somebody who specializes in sex crimes, that it is not actually that odd for somebody to come forward years later under certain circumstances, triggering things.
And let me pause it right here. And the reason why most people don't want to come out is mainly due to the shame, and mainly due to them not wanting to be victimized again when they talk about it. That's why a lot of people don't want to come out, especially males. Because with males, not only is it a shame behind it, it's also the whole, some of it is victim blaming, and some of it is it's basically how society views male victims as opposed to female victims. And me personally, society should not view male victims differently from children victims and or female victims. Any victim of SA should be treated the same, and should be treated with dignity and respect, from the investigators to the police to the courts, etc.
That caused them to say something that they otherwise did not say sooner. That being said, when there is a delay, it also means that there is potentially spoliation of evidence, right? And so where evidence could have been detected if the outcry was sooner, it may not exist now, whether that's physical evidence, biological evidence, text messages, cell phones that may have been discarded, things of that nature. And of course, people's memory decays over time. So it is a little bit harder for the prosecution But that being said, when there are multiple victims, that bolsters the prosecution. So it's kind of a give and take.
As part of the investigation into Rizzatello, more charges could be filed down the line. Is it possible that investigators dig into the background of other students and ask around, hey, has anyone seen anything? Could there be more survivors?
Absolutely. And if they're doing the right thing and they're doing a good job, they will do a thorough, unbiased investigation. Once you start seeing that it's multiple people, again, if it's one, then, you know, maybe somebody could chalk it up to, well, she just focused in on this one person. But when there's multiple, now you're dealing with almost like a different profile of this defendant, of this person, as a predator, as somebody who is taking advantage perhaps of multiple young children, and it's really a problem, and the investigation has to be as thorough as possible. And yeah, they're going to ask, they're going to do interviews, and they'll probably ask the two people who came forward, hey, do you know of anybody else that this might have happened to? And they might start their investigation that way.
Of the dozens of teacher stories we've covered here at Law and Crime, we've seen that pattern before. After one accuser comes forward, others may soon follow. But the one thing that's different about Rizzatello's case is that at least one accuser was over 18 years old at the time of the incidents. I'm wondering, just to play devil's advocate, if her defense could say, we didn't even know that that was against the law. He was 18. We thought it was legal. Is that something that her defense is likely to come forward and say?
It's possible, but I don't think it will fly, because ignorance is actually not defense. It is the law, and the law is the law, and you're imputed with that knowledge. As a teacher, you are imputed with the knowledge that this is against the law. Most likely, you know, the truth is, if I'm the prosecutor, I'm also digging into the training materials of teachers, you know, the certificate that she's received. I am sure, at least I would hope, that when she was trained, that they explained to these teachers in training what is allowed and what is not allowed. I mean, you would hope it's obvious, but also for liability purposes, I would expect that she was trained in this and that she absolutely should have known. But even if she didn't, the law is the law.
So if she can't use ignorance as some sort of defense, is there any defense you could see her using that she could have the charges dismissed or be found not guilty?
The only thing that I could imagine at this point is that she's going to have to claim that the students are lying. That's probably why she tried to get them to delete the text messages or any other evidence, because if there's no solid evidence coming from her phone, for example, acknowledging the relationship, she could basically try to say anything and say, look, these kids, they didn't like me, maybe I was a harsh grader, or they're just trying to take advantage. And you know, kids, like, they'll make up anything. So she could probably try to go with that.
It won't work.
The only other thing typically you can go with in a defense is like, it wasn't me, or there was a false identification. But she's obviously well known.
What just happened? It just went away. Don't tell me it's updating. Ah, crap, it's updating. Well, end of the video.